Tensions between the United States and Russia have reached a new peak after Trump's ultimatum. The American president took everyone by surprise, as The Hill writes. The abrupt shift from negotiations with Putin to a tougher position. The deadline of 10 days, not 50, to end the war was a complete surprise, including for the White House staff. The American president set new conditions, either peace or sanctions, which will hit not only Moscow, but also its trading partners, China, India and Brazil. Kyiv. This news was met with almost fireworks. Zelensky immediately recorded a video message, where he called Trump's statement historically important. His right-hand man, Yermak, thanks the West for starting to talk to Russia from a position of strength. But in Washington, not everything is clear yet. 15 senators, mostly Republicans, are blocking a new package of sanctions. They are waiting for Trump's direct order. Democratic Senator Chris Van Hollen even accused the American president of the fact that Ukraine can no longer be saved, and Trump missed this historic chance. And now a sensation from the Russian Foreign Intelligence Service. They report that the presidential elections in Ukraine were held at an alpine resort. Representatives of the United States and Britain organized a secret meeting with the head of the office, Yermak, the head of intelligence Budanov, and former commander-in-chief Zelensky. Yermak himself set up Zelensky, convincing him to sign a law limiting the powers of anti-corruption agencies. And now the West believes that Zelensky is encroaching on democracy, which means Zelensky needs to be replaced. The main candidate for the post of the new president of Ukraine is Zelensky. The former commander-in-chief himself, one might say, has started an election campaign. His programmatic interview appeared today in a fashionable glossy magazine, a story about childhood, about life prospects. Zelensky is the complete opposite of Zelensky. He is clean-shaven, neat, in a formal civilian suit. A photo shoot is included. According to the latest polls, if the elections were held next Sunday, Zelensky would take first place. Budanov is in second place, Zelensky is only third.
According to information received by the Russian Foreign Intelligence Service, in one of the Alpine resort towns, representatives of the United States and Great Britain recently organized a secret meeting with the participation of the head of the office of the President of Ukraine, Yermak, the head of the main intelligence directorate of the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense, Budanov, and the former commander-in-chief of Ukraine, the Ukrainian ambassador to London, Zelensky. The prospects for replacing Zelensky as the head of the Kyiv regime were discussed. All participants in the meeting agreed that the issue was long overdue. Zelensky's replacement essentially became a key condition for resetting Kyiv's relations with Western partners, with Washington, and continuing Western assistance to Ukraine in the confrontation with Russia. The Americans and the British announced their decision to nominate Zelensky for the post of president of Ukraine. Yermak and Budanov saluted. At the same time, they secured promises from the Anglo-Saxons to keep their current posts for them, as well as to take their interests into account when deciding other personnel issues. The agreement reached in the Alps sheds light on the background of the president's recent scandalous attempt to limit the powers of local anti-corruption structures by clearing the political field for Zelensky. Yermak set up Zelensky. He convinced him that such a step would not spoil Kyiv's relations with Western partners. But in fact, Yermak created a pretext for the West to start a campaign to remove the expired president from power as an encroacher on democracy. The meeting and its results provide grounds to appeal to the citizens of Ukraine. So, the elections of the new president of your country, Ukraine, took place at an alpine resort. Is this how you imagine the triumph of Ukrainian democracy, independence, and autonomy, which you have long dreamed of?
So, Bloomberg writes that the Kremlin is demonstratively silent and does not react to Trump's statement. At the same time, the Kremlin itself, represented by Peskov, today described in more than detail its attitude to Trump's new ultimatum. The press secretary of the Russian president said that the Kremlin took note of the statement of the head of the United States. Moscow's official position remains unchanged. Readiness for negotiations while taking into account Moscow's interests. American propaganda is already reporting that Russia's main trading partners, India, China and Turkey, are unlikely to join possible new sanctions. All this reduces the potential effectiveness of American measures and threats. This is on the one hand. On the other hand, Reuters writes that the market took Trump's threats seriously. Oil prices rose by 3% on his statement alone without introducing duties. In general, the introduction of 100% tariffs could cause disruptions in global supplies, lead to an even sharper rise in oil prices, and hit the global economy. At the same time, Ukrainian pensioners are being driven to the front. Zelensky today signed a decree that allowed the Ukrainian army to recruit old people over 60. There is a catastrophic shortage of people on the front lines. Propagandists of the Ukrainian army publication Posledny Bastion report that the Ukrainian army is being reduced by 10 to 15,000 soldiers every month. While on paper Ukraine has 1 million bayonets, in reality there are no more than 300,000 soldiers in the trenches. The Kyiv regime states that before being sent to the front, the elderly will undergo a 2-week course for young fighters. The contract itself will be valid for a year. If desired, if you are not killed, the contract can be extended. By a strange coincidence, it is in August that pensions for elderly people over 70 years old are to be indexed in Ukraine. And apparently Zelensky decided to remove the extra financial burden from an already unprofitable budget in such a bloody way. Today, new details have emerged about the first transfer of American nuclear weapons to London since 2008. Bloomberg writes that the bombs were delivered to the Royal Air Force Lakenheath Air Base in the most open, if not provocative, way. The C-17 transport plane with the B-61-12 thermonuclear bombs was flying with the transponder on. And this is a signal to Putin personally. So, U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel Jeffrey Fritz came up with a scandalous idea to buy the Commander Islands from Russia for $15 billion. We are talking about an archipelago of 4 islands in the southwestern part of the Bering Sea, Pacific Ocean. According to the American Lieutenant Colonel, these islands will allow Washington to control China's activity in the Arctic. In Moscow, this idea was called absurd. Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Zakharova suggested that the United States use this money, $15 billion, if they are extra, to pay off the American national debt. On our part, we suggest that they give us back Alaska. On March 30, 1867, a treaty was signed between the Russian Empire and the United States on the sale of Alaska for $7.2 million. Fourth, we will not give the Commander Islands to the American Lieutenant Colonel.
In 1867, Secretary of State William Stewart's purchase of Alaska was criticized. It was called Stewart's Folly. Today, Alaska remains the cornerstone of the United States' energy and defense strategy. Now, the United States has a similarly transformative opportunity that can strengthen Arctic security, reunite disunited indigenous populations, and reaffirm America's leadership in a rapidly developing region. The proposal is for the United States to peacefully and pragmatically purchase the Commander Islands from the Russian Federation for $15 billion to monitor potential Chinese submarine activity attempting to enter the Arctic Ocean. This initiative reflects strategic foresight based on geopolitical realism, unity, and securing the future of the Arctic. However, despite the inherent difficulties, carefully structured agreements could bring mutual benefits to both Washington and Moscow.
Polish logistics companies are on the verge of bankruptcy because of Ukraine, or more precisely, because of Ukrainian grain. Representatives of the agricultural sector are suffering multi-million-dollar losses due to the cessation of Ukrainian wheat and barley supplies. Thousands of trucks are idle at the borders, threatening mass layoffs. There is no hope for improvement. A terrible picture is now unfolding in the Ukrainian fields, where grain used to come from. Swarms of locusts are devouring the remains of wheat, destroying what little could reach Polish terminals. Millions of insects have filled the sky, creating a picture that German propaganda has already dubbed the biblical apocalypse. The locusts have destroyed sunflower and corn crops. In the worst-hit areas, pesticides have been urgently used, but the situation is only getting worse. Local residents are filming videos in panic. Giant swarms of locusts have literally eclipsed the sun, leaving behind empty fields. The situation is also taking on a political tint. Western media are spreading the version that Russia is involved in the environmental disaster. Hungarian Prime Minister Orbán said that Trump simply ate Ursula von der Leyen for breakfast, thereby emphasizing the humiliating nature of the agreements reached. Hungarian Foreign Minister Szijjártó went even further, saying that by Ursula von der Leyen they had washed the floor. The agreement does indeed look humiliating. It will impose 15% tariffs on European goods imported into the United States, while completely lifting tariff barriers on American exports to the European Union. French Prime Minister François Bayrou described the situation as a dark day for Europe, noting that the European Union, created to protect common interests, had effectively capitulated to America. Germany, with its export-oriented economy, turned out to be especially vulnerable. Chancellor Merz, acknowledging the inevitable losses for German industry, tried to present the agreement as the lesser of two evils, arguing that the worst-case scenario, which could have been worse, was avoided. Opposition forces in the Bundestag do not share Chancellor Merz's optimism, calling the European Union a vassal of the United States of America, accusing the leadership of the European Union of betrayal. Particular attention is drawn to the scandalous clause about the allegedly planned EU investments in the American economy in the amount of $600 billion. As it turned out, this money should come exclusively from the private sector, which makes this promise legally null and void. American Democratic Senator Chuck Schumer called the agreement a fake, noting that the new duties will ultimately hit the pockets of the Americans themselves. Paradoxically, Great Britain, acting outside the framework of the European Union, managed to get better conditions from Washington. This fact calls into question the very rationale for the existence of a single European trade policy.